Alright guys, let's talk about it. Last Epoch. Is it worth your time if you are a Diablo fan or a Path of Exile fan? And I will briefly answer the question, will Last Epoch kill Diablo 4? I don't know why this is something that I've seen consistently while I am just live streaming. People are asking, am I going to be playing Last Epoch? Do I think it's going to kill Diablo? And there's probably a bunch of YouTubers that have probably made videos around this subject. And while I want to say that they are the same type of game, they are different in many ways. Like, when Apex Legends came out, I remember people were talking about, oh, it's going to kill Fortnite. Even though they are basically the same in terms of, yes, Fortnite and Apex Legends are battle royales. As Last Epoch is an action RPG, Diablo is an action RPG, and Path of Exile is an action RPG. The difference is that these games kind of have a lifespan of the season, and while the season is going on, there's a new season, people hop in. Just like myself, when Diablo has a new season, I will hop into it and we will play, and then when Path of Exile has a new season, I will hop into play, and then once I've kind of completed enough content, I consider it kind of done. Now, I will always revisit the game when it has a newer season, but I don't think any of these games will necessarily cannibalize each other, as all these games will have kind of seasons, and once you get kind of burnt out, you skip out on a season or two or whatever, and you come back into the game, and I think that that's totally fine. I think a lot of Diablo players will be coming back when the expansion pack comes out later this year that have maybe kind of given up on the game. And while Last Epoch will be really popular, they just announced they have sold 1 million copies, and they had just recently announced in one of their most recent updates a lot of the problems that I think that the game actually had. So what you guys are seeing, just as a heads up, obviously it's Last Epoch. This is not the full version of the game. It's still considered the beta of the game, and the game will be releasing by the time this video is out. It'll be out tomorrow. And while I have very high hopes for the game, the one thing that was always holding the game back, and you can see, like, I played this game for tons and tons of hours. I got like over 100 hours. You can see I have a lot of characters that have all reached the end game, which is essentially kind of like a greater rift or like a mapping system. It's actually a pretty cool system from what you guys will see. I was playing on an online character. Usually I played offline because online mode didn't exist back when I backed this game. I think it was even on like Kickstarter at one point or something. But nonetheless, this game does have a buy-in price, just as a heads up. It's not free. At the current time of me making this video, it's 35 bucks, but it does cost money, unlike, let's say, Path of Exile. But at the end of the day, this game has really good developers, as in, I think they really understand action RPGs, which is something that I think Diablo 4 absolutely lacks. So, starting right off, is this game worth your time, and am I going to be playing it? To answer that, well, I've already been playing it. I just haven't uploaded a lot of videos recently because I want to wait for the game to launch. The main concern that I always had with this game is specifically the graphics, as well as the way that the game feels, the action visceral combat. When you hit something, the registration, and they mentioned this several times that they have updated it in the most recent update video that just got dropped hours before me releasing this video. That was the one concern that I had for Last Epoch, that it wouldn't be able to hold up to the other games because it didn't feel like a AAA game. It definitely understands what an action RPG is. It understands itemization so well, and it understands crafting so well. And this is one thing that I think is miles ahead of any action RPG, is that this game, it maintains a level of complexity while still being easy enough for the average player to kind of just mess around with and tinker around with and kind of get what they want without being forced to go to watch like a guide that is hours long. Sure, content creators will always give you the best advice when you are like brand new to a game compared to if you're just hopping into the first time. But this game does it in a way where I would say it's relatively fair for people. If they want to tinker around with some of the endgame things, they can do so without having to watch a video. And I think that that's really good, because this is something as a Diablo content creator where if I upload Path of Exile videos, people are like, dude, this game is too confusing. I'm just like, no, just follow this guide. It's super easy. And sometimes people just simply get overwhelmed with the content. Now, I want to go over one thing that's kind of important with this game, because there is a lot of diversity and there's a lot of really cool builds, and I want to show off some of the things that exist in the game. So, starting right off, there are multiple classes. So there's 5 classes that you select from, but each one of these classes actually gets to go into another class, which is actually one of the coolest features with this game. Also, by the way, we're listening to the Last Epoch soundtrack. So starting right off, you have like your starter classes. There's the Mage, Rogue, Primalist, Acolyte, and Sentinel. So just because you see the mage, don't think that that's the only spellcaster. Some of these can kind of go into more of a spellcaster sort of a feel, and there are ones that can technically go into more, of a pet build. And this game, again, I want to stress that this game understands action RPGs so much better than a lot of other games, and I give them a lot of credit over here because they understand itemization, they understand kind of like the design of a class, and I think this is a really great thing. So you'll see mage can go over here into the rune master, spellblade, sorcerer, and some of these, they may sound kind of vague until you actually open up the game, and I'm not going to go into depth here, but basically, the rogue has a better example over here that it has a little bit of a class specialization that can go into like a subclass. So you have your rogue, which is basically your melee and range character. However, if you want to be more of a range character, the marksman would be better. If you want to be someone that dual wields your weapons, then the blade dancer is excellent. But then you have the falconeer, which is basically a build that is brand new. This is one of the newer classes that is only going to be playable on launch because it wasn't available in the beta, where you have like a pet falcon. And so you have these different playstyles. So don't think that there's only 5 classes. Now you could straight up just kind of play a rogue in a way, and there's like basically you just spec into a lot of the things that are on the rogue like starter area. So you can kind of still build like a core class, so to speak, but you pretty much are going to be selecting one of these later. I won't go too in depth on it, but you can kind of try to play more of a core if you just really like the rogue. But a lot of these have something that's like really good, like being able to dual wield, or like there's some special skills that unlock for that class. Now it's not like Path of Exile where any class can use any skill. Each class has their own skill, but this is like the one big thing, and there are different little masteries here. I'm not going to go too far into it because then this video might be way too long. So on top of the classes over here, the skills is what makes this game unique. Each skill in this game, you guys are seeing multiple gameplays. Right now I'm running my like bear druid, which I absolutely love. I haven't uploaded any build guides. Those guys that were asking while I was playing, like, do you have any build guides? I'm going to reserve all the build guides because there's so many changes to the game when it launches that I don't want to drop a build guide and then like literally 2 days later, well, it doesn't work or it's too nerfed, and there's a lot of numbers that are being changed. I mean, some of the stuff during the end game is getting double HP, and if you're not just like breezing one-shotting things as you're progressing in an action RPG, I feel like the build is not good. So I'm going to reserve and wait for all the patch notes to come out. Well, technically the patch notes just dropped, but I like to also have a feel for it, and there's going to be a lot more things in the game. Anyways, the most important thing is the skills in this game. What's really cool is you can pick a bunch of different skills, and each skill has its own skill tree. Now, some of these will have overlapping things, as in like, oh, you shoot a fireball, oh, it does more damage, okay? There's generic things like just damage or like size and basic things that you would expect to see in an action RPG, but some of them, like, this is really excellent over here. I'm going to make this really large so you guys can see. So this is a skill, it's shurikens, it throws 3 shurikens in a cone. You can change it and convert it to like a bladed shield, or you can make it so it shoots out in a star pattern, or you can make it so it has some sort of damage. This would be more similar to like the Diablo rune system. There's a bunch of skills where basically you convert whatever damage type it is, and it can work well with a unique item or something along the lines of that. So you can see there's a black hole over here. Now there's 2 stars that can orbit around, and now you, instead of dealing 1, I don't know if they call it shadow damage or dark damage or what, physical, whatever, it does 1 type of damage and you're converting it. This one over here changes its damage, and it no longer pulls in enemies, but it lasts longer, so more AoE. Maybe you just want it to be as big as possible, and you can activate cold damage or fire damage, proccing burning or some sort of condition on the enemy. Some of these have a lot of complexity. Speaking of complexity, this is one of the coolest things with the game. So it understands you have implicits, and then you have like your blue items, yellow items, and your purple items. Purple items in the game are some of the better items, and they're really only in the end game, which basically what they come down to is they have one of the rolls higher than any other thing that can roll in the game. So think of it like if something can have a max roll of, let's say, 31 health, and the purple stat on the purple item, I believe you can only have 1 purple stat on the item, it just drops and it rolls, let's say, like 50 health, which is more than anything that can drop in the game as a yellow item. And then you can kind of craft legendaries, and I won't go too far into the crafting system in this game, but this is kind of like the basics of it, the very, very basics. You literally just collect shards, and you can get these runes. Runes are almost like Path of Exile currency, so you can kind of add different modifiers, remove random modifiers, kind of affect the item in a certain way. Now, there are runes that are going to shatter an item, so you could take an item, let's say an item rolls with health and let's say some sort of like crit chance or something like that. Okay, you can shatter it with the rune and it will give you the shards that you need for crafting. But crafting is super easy in this game. It's super incredibly beginner friendly because you can literally just read the things and it'll be an absolute breeze. There's no other game that has, I would say, crafting with the exception of maybe like Torchlight Infinite that is like easy to understand, that you can just kind of take an item and work with it. And the one reason why I really like the crafting in this game is every item has its own purpose. So you could take an item and it's going to have what's called crafting potential on it. So ideally you would try to get an item that basically has 2 or 3 of the stats that you would want, and then you kind of craft on it. Yeah, you could take some other items and it might have more crafting potential, but then you have to kind of get the higher rolls on it. But basically, you just get these shards as you progress in the game. They'll just drop and you can hit an item and it just vacuums and sucks them all from your inventory. So there's no like stash space issues with this game. That's a huge thing. Like I said, they actually play action RPGs here, and I don't mean to like kind of slander Diablo by saying they don't actually understand our action RPGs, but it's clear that they don't play it at the level that I think most people want the developers to play it at. And what I mean by that is there's so many things that like if you just play Diablo, like the world boss doesn't give you anything good, the stash space issues, the aspect issues with like the way that just clogs up your inventory, the way uber uniques are only dropping from Duria, like the loot filter, the trade system. There's so many basic things that like this game will have at launch, and even has a leaderboard. Like there's so many things that like Diablo just absolutely lacks as an action RPG that just feels undercooked. But you know, I'm hopeful for the future of Diablo 4. But again, I don't think this game's going to cannibalize and just destroy. I mean, for the first few weeks, believe me, as well as a bunch of other Diablo partners, we're all going to be playing Last Epoch. But anyways, going on with the crafting system, the glyph system basically allows you to kind of have more of a safe craft option, because you have what's called forging potential, and you basically can select like a prefix or a suffix, and you can modify these things, and you can go up in tier, but it's going to use what's called forging potential. So basically, that's where your RNG comes in. You're always going to get the craft that you want. Now, is it going to be the high tier or low tier? Well, that's how many times you're crafting on it. It's a great crafting system. You basically get to craft exactly what you want with almost no risk, other than the forging potential might not roll the highest. So it's a very easy system. Think of it like Path of Exile, that you can guarantee all the low tier rolls on an item. Sure, it might not be the best, but it's at least somewhat usable. And for any build guides, this makes it so easy because you can just get the item that you want guaranteed. Now, again, the rolls might not be perfect, but that's a brief understanding of the crafting system. There is something way more complex that goes into legendary potential, and you can like basically craft legendaries. It's a pretty cool damn system. And then there's also like itemization for idols. If you play Diablo 2, these are charms. Basically, you have a separate inventory. This is actually the talisman system straight up from Diablo 3 that never came out. They kind of copied it, I'm not gonna lie. But it's a cool system. Diablo never came out with it, so I don't know. Like Diablo 3 had this system. They had the idols, and then they just scrapped it. I don't know why. But they took the system, and I think it was a great idea. And then the unique items in this game, they could have probably showed off some better ones here, because some of these, well, this one inflicts like chill on it. Some of these items in the game, and speaking of itemization, it's so cool because you can go into like, let's say, swords, right? In Diablo, you have like a couple different like artworks of swords, and then like you have basically swords and then daggers, right? But in this, you have all these different ones, and then they all have their own implicit on it, and you may want to run this one to apply void damage for a certain reason or a certain build. Like all these have some sort of like thing with it. Like look at how many different swords exist in the game. And then you have your uniques, which can do certain things. You can get elemental attacks, deal increased damage per ward. Ward is basically energy shield in Path of Exile, or a barrier in Diablo. Basically, you have uniques that can actually work. Now, I haven't tested every single unique in the game, but I'm gonna be straight up with you guys. Diablo 4 has so many uniques that absolutely do not function. They do not work. Like, they do not work in the endgame. You cannot take certain items and expect, like, them to actually see any like realistic play in like the meta. Like Wind Force, which is an OG iconic item in Diablo 4, has been buffed 4 times and it sees less than 1% play at high-end level endgame. So what's the point of even having this OG unique item and it doesn't even function? You could take like Estodora's Overflowing Cameo, the amulet that's supposed to give you Lightning Nova, which is a skill that only exists with that unique in Diablo 4, but it's garbage. So there are things here that I would say, again, I haven't tested all of them, but this is one area where I feel like I want to give them extra credit here, because most of the stuff should actually work, because you can basically craft legendary powers onto other things, and you can make like a low-level unique actually viable towards the end game when you can actually have this crafting system, which I'll probably reserve some dedicated videos towards crafting. But like, trust me, this game understands action RPGs. It understands, like, there's like these gloves that I really liked on my Shadow Dancer. Am I playing it? This is my Shadow Dancer here. This is one of my favorite classes, and it's basically like it's like a dual-wielding rogue here. But there are these gloves. Let me go to unique, where it says like your crit. Where, okay, that's like on the implicit. There's by the way, this is really cool. There's actually set items in this game. Diablo still doesn't have set items, which is kind of disappointing. But there are a pair of unique gloves, unless they just got like nerfed or like removed in the game. Anyways, they exist. I don't know why they're not in this category, but there is a unique, or I don't think it's a set item. Anyways, there is a pair of gloves in the game where it says like you can't crit anymore, but you get like some like massive amount of attack speed. There are things where like it considers you to have some sort of debuff. Like it actually makes sense as a unique versus like a lot of the uniques in Diablo 4, they actually are just like so terrible, right? And that's one thing that I really disliked with Diablo 4 is like you have all these uniques that are absolutely garbage that like don't have any defensive stats and like a chest piece. Some of the things like Scoundrel's Leather still do not work after multiple seasons. Like in season 2 it got released, or even you talk about like Soulbind or the Tassets of the Dawning Sky, where like these items simply do not function because they're so bad, and it's weird because they just came out, right? And that's really disappointing to see these uniques. Because like I look at some of the stuff in this game, and I always like to do this in an action RPG before making a character. I'm like, okay, well, let's say I want to build a bow character. I want to check out what uniques exist in this game, so maybe I can build a character that's all about this. Like this one gives us plus skills to falconry. Some of them, they're just going to be like numerical number stats, and that's cool, and this is pretty cool on the little like wiki here. But you can see some of these, chance to cast Dragonfire on a crit. Okay, so what's Dragonfire? Well, I can mouse over, it's going to tell me what it does. Now, it does some sort of damage, and it says added spell damage applies at 900% effectiveness. Okay, so now I have a bow character, then I can just build spell damage on, and I can just get as much crit as possible and don't even build attack damage. This is the kind of brain IQ that I want to see in uniques. I don't just want, oh, well, it just does more damage, it's a unique, right? Like a legendary, like 500% multiplier. This is where it becomes cool, and I'm like, okay, I like this. I like theory crafting, and I like these cool, unique ideas. That's what a unique item should be. Not an item where it just gives you numerical stats and plus level of skills. I mean, granted, I know I'm saying that, and this gives you plus skills. But again, you're building the character kind of in a different way, where you might not normally want to actually go for it. So that's what I like with Last Epoch. So to answer your question, is this game worth your time? Hopefully a lot of these things, I know I've been talking mostly praise. I haven't even said one negative thing realistically with this game. The only negative thing that I want to say, and I'm going to be straight up with you guys on it, this could change. The story in the campaign, I just kind of breeze through it. I just kind of skip. When the game comes out, I'll do a full walkthrough playthrough, and I'm going to keep all of the cutscenes in the game because they have definitely beefed up the visuals. So my complaints with this game would legitimately only be also, this is another like huge pro, and I feel like it's important to mention. If you are interested in solo self-found, there is a mode where you can play, and it basically gives you higher drop rates. Now, the people that want to engage in trade, obviously, you can still do that. So it gives you these options, and if you play with someone on your friends list consistently, you could just gift them the item with this sort of like new. You have some sort of other currency that you, I guess, need to use to trade items. But nonetheless, you can trade, you cannot trade in the game. And I genuinely think open trade, like straight up like Diablo 2 or Path of Exile, is the best way to actually acquire loot. Like, it's so disappointing, even with Diablo's uber uniques. And I don't mean to make this video too complaining about Diablo, but this is what's going to, I guess, kill Diablo in a sense, because it does some of these things so much better by a long mile shot. As far as the endgame goes, by the way, it's literally rifts and maps. It's not really anything too special. However, there are these other modes where it's like waves of enemies, and there is this really cool mode where you can swap in between two different timelines. It's almost like if you played, I think it was in Titanfall 2, where you can swap between going to the past and the present. This game had inspiration by Chrono Trigger, which is that's a game for like Super Nintendo. Really cool system where it has like these different timelines, but basically you get to swap in between these timelines, and you get to like basically craft these like super rare legendaries by doing, I think that's how you unlock that mode. There are other modes, but for the most part, the end game, it don't expect anything super crazy mind-blowing. Like, you can fight waves of enemies. There are a couple different modes, but at the core of it, the action RPG, you're killing a bunch of monsters and you're getting loot, and that's the most fun part, and they do it well. It's just the feeling of the game does not feel AAA, but they have updated the game in terms of like the 1.0 update, which is coming out tomorrow, which is the release of the game. That's going to address how the game feels. If they nail that, like if I was to give this game a recommendation, absolutely, if you are a huge fan of action RPGs, you'll love this game. Like if you love Diablo or Path of Exile, without a doubt, you will like this game. However, if the game doesn't feel like super good, that would maybe have people a little bit disappointed. But again, that was the only concern that I had with this game. The itemization is good, the end game is good, the diversity is good, the complexity is good, the crafting is good. There is really nothing bad with this game. And I know, and this is not a sponsored video, okay, just as a heads up. I just love action RPGs. I want to say I've played every action RPG with the exception of maybe some games that never released in the States here. Like I still have like Lineage W on one of my to-do lists. But for the most part, like I've played Wolcen, I've played all the Torchlight games, Torchlight Infinite. Obviously, we played all the Diablo games, all the action RPGs, whether it be Grim Dawn, Titan Quest, and this game is definitely a game where it understands what an action RPG is, which is really cool to say. So at the end of the day, could I recommend this game? Without a doubt, yes. Now, if I was to give this game a numerical score from how much fun I had with the game, I want to say, if I was a game reviewer, what would I give in the game in the beta? Because remember, the full game isn't out. I legit would give this game an 8 out of 10. That's my numerical score for it in the beta. The only thing wrong, and I legitimately mean the only thing wrong, is just the way that the game feels. Like when you hit an enemy, the action visceral combat does not feel up on par with what is available in the market. Like, it's not on the par with Path of Exile 1. It's not on par with Diablo 3 even, where how the game feels. Now, if they get that right, this is an absolute banger, certified classic, and it is going to be one of the best action RPGs ever. Legitimately, like easy 9 or 10 out of 10, because I'm gonna be honest, the campaign for the game wasn't something that was super memorable, but I don't care about the campaign too much in an action RPG, because yeah, cool, you spend, maybe 5 to 10 hours in a campaign, and then you spend thousands of hours in the end game. So I'm very lenient on the campaign being absolutely trash, and I want to say the campaign for me was a little bit forgettable. There's a couple like cool pieces where like you're flying on this thing. I was like kind of blown away by it, but some of the stuff that they showed off is kind of cool from like the most recent update. Like the game looks and feels a lot better from the new gameplay trailer that they again showed off. But that's my only concern with the game, which is pretty good. So anyways, yeah, absolutely recommend the game. We'll be dropping build guides and stuff, so if you're new here and you do want to see build guides for Last Epoch, hit subscribe, turn the bell. We're probably going to be rolling with the Blade Dancer class, and I'm also curious, just off of this, maybe you've played the game, maybe you haven't played the game, what kind of looks like a class that you guys are most interested in, because that's probably going to be my second class. My absolute first class, because like I'm a rogue player, we're going to definitely go rogue. Now, the Falconeer looks pretty cool, but I'm probably going to go with the Blade Dancer as our very first class. Now, you can respec and go into another class later, but our first class will absolutely be the Rogue. 99% sure I'm going to be going the Blade Dancer unless there's some broken OP thing with like Falconeer or something, or some other class maybe that's like so OP that like I have to run it. But pretty much we're going to be going Rogue, Blade Dancer. But which one of these classes interests you the most? And that's going to be what I plan to play for maybe by the second class. Anyways, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next Epoch video, which will be very soon because it's coming out tomorrow, and we'll be live streaming it on Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. Peace out.